Alright, so this one's directed by Robert Rodriguez, whose movies I don't tend to like. In fact, the only one I've liked is Sin City, and I think a lot of the credit goes to Frank Miller for that one. But this is actually more of a James Cameron project than anything else. He wrote it and produced it, and I think he'd been wanting to make this for like a decade. And yeah, this does feel a lot like a James Cameron movie, which to me isn't necessarily a good thing because, well, unpopular opinion I guess. But I'm not a huge fan of James Cameron's movies, to be honest. However, that's a rant I'm not gonna go into right now, but let's just say I've noticed a clear pattern. There are a few things pretty much all of his movies have in common. Well, first of all, James Cameron obviously knows how to make movies that sell tickets. That look great, have some cool ideas, offer a lot of spectacle, and often push technology forward. But here's the thing, that's all surface level stuff, because the writing is usually kinda bad. The premise and the setting is usually cool, but the core story is generally very cookie cutter. And the dialogue is most often pretty clunky and filled with exposition. And his character writing is, well, not great. I mean, almost none of his characters feel like actual human beings. I don't remember ever relating to any of them, except maybe Sarah Connor to some extent. Which for me at least makes it pretty difficult to get invested. And you know what? All of those issues are present here too. Now granted, I didn't go into this expecting to like it, but I was hoping to like it. I was hoping that it would at least be fun, but it just wasn't. In fact, I had a real hard time staying awake, and that is not a joke. This movie was just so bland and boring to me, I couldn't believe it. There was just nothing to grab onto and to keep me engaged. I mean, from the very first few moments I was already getting disinterested. And it starts with this scientist robotics guru guy played by Christoph Waltz, who finds this trashed cyborg girl in the scrapyard 500 years in the future. And he decides to rebuild her, but wouldn't you know it, she can't remember her past. And she knows basically nothing about the society she now finds herself in. So it's a bit of a fish out of water scenario, like Terminator and Avatar. Which, to be fair, can make for a great story. Unfortunately, this time it doesn't. Because turns out she's actually not as helpless as it first seemed. And she pretty much adapts to her surroundings in no time flat. And is more or less excellent at whatever she tries her hand at. There's not much of a struggle there or any sort of extended learning curve. We don't get to see her grow and evolve and face any sort of significant setbacks or challenges. You know, something that would actually make her character interesting and compelling. Oh, and then there's this love interest too, because of course there is. But he's about as interesting as a brick wall too, and their chemistry is nowhere to be found. Not to mention that the story and the writing involving these two just doesn't do anything to make it compelling or believable. She basically falls for the first guy she runs into and they fall in love, because why not? And we're supposed to care because the movie says so. I mean, there's just no depth, nuance or complexity to this thing whatsoever. And there's no subtlety either, every important detail is just spoon-fed to you through exposition. And the overall story here, I mean, it's one of the least satisfying things I've ever seen. It felt almost like watching a 2-hour teaser trailer. And when it eventually got somewhere, it ended. It's like it's missing a third act basically, the grand finale, the real payoff. The whole thing is more or less just a setup for a sequel that's probably not going to get made. Like, there's not much of any real consequence that actually happens here. And the things that did happen I didn't care about because I wasn't invested in the slightest. So yeah, needless to say, I didn't care for this at all. It's easily one of my least favorite movies I've seen all year, mostly because of the writing. I mean, it looks fine, a little CGI and green screen heavy maybe, which is sometimes very apparent. And I guess it's competently shot and directed too, but there's just no substance here. Nothing to make it a compelling movie on any level, and I was literally falling asleep watching it. So yeah, would I recommend it? No, definitely not. It's pretty safe to skip. Or you could not do any of that, because I'm not your dad. But I am trying to sell out, so consider liking, subbing, hitting that bell and supporting me on Patreon. Because I really need to get myself a pair of those electric roller skates. And hey, why not drop a comment below or check out another review? I'd appreciate it. Thanks.